Hello, I'm Laura. I'm the CEO of VMV Hypoallergenics. We're here to save the world's skin with the safest, most proven effective care on the planet. And today I will be giving you the skinny on Do Cosmetics Expire. Before I get into that, please follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have a great blog that's super informative, vmvinskin.com. And if you would like to shop our products, you can find them at vmvhypoallergenics.com internationally or vmvhypoallergenics.ph in the Philippines. One of the most common questions I get from friends, they'll text me a photo, say, of a VMV product, and they'll ask, can I still use this? You know, it's got a certain date on it. And can I use, do cosmetics expire? And if they do, can I use the product after it's expired? Getting into it, do cosmetics expire? The answer is not really, or probably less than you think. They're not food. So if you leave a cosmetic product out, like a banana or an apple or pizza, those things really rot rather quickly, right? I guess the quickest answer, or to summarize it sort of really in a nutshell, is cosmetic products in general, as a rule, don't tend to expire, not maybe in the way that you might think in terms of rotting. And this is particularly true the less water that a product has in it. And even if something does, quote, expire, you can probably use it for a few months after. What you need to check for is microbial contamination. Microbial contamination can happen even before a product's expiration date. So that's different. That's when you see something really smell bad or look very different. Or if the formulation starts to fall apart, it's become very unstable and things start to separate. And then the product probably won't function the way it was intended, but that's not necessarily rotting. The closer thing to rotting might be a microbial contamination. Most cosmetics have to have some sort of preservation in order to be sold. Remember, a lot of these products have to stay on shelves for quite a bit. And they're not food. It's not like leaving an apple or a banana or a pizza out in the open, and they will just rot over time, especially if a cosmetic product is closed and sealed and stored properly, away from water, away from direct sunlight and heat. Then yeah, chances are it'll last quite a long time, actually, especially if you don't share. And I'm not talking about, I use a cleanser that my husband happens to also use, or we use the same lotion or sunscreen. I'm talking about particularly, let's say you apply lipstick on your lips directly, and then someone else does that directly, that could be an issue. If you are sharing, like with, best friend or someone else in your home, cutting off or scraping off the top layer would be a good idea. Applying the lipstick over like a boo-boo balm, something to help reduce the risk of microbial contamination because of the germs in our mouths. Or sharing mascara wands is another really common way to share microbes and get microbes into a product. Another way to really increase the chances of introducing microbes into a product is if you are taking out a lotion or something and you take out too much and you stuff the rest of it back in, or some of it spills out and you put it back into the container. That's a pretty solid way to introduce microbes into the formulation. Or if you're using a product near water and water gets inside. Microbes tend to like water. That's where they tend to sort of get happy and proliferate. So those are some things really to avoid to prevent microbial contamination. But otherwise, properly stored without risky behavior, risky practices that can increase the risk of microbial contamination, most cosmetics, especially the less water that they have, tend to last really quite a long time. Years. Why do some cosmetics then have expiration dates, right? This largely depends on the FDA regulations of a certain country. Some FDAs will require an expiration date on cosmetics if in that market the product is considered a drug, or if they have regulations like the product's stability cannot be guaranteed for longer than I don't know, 12 months, 15 months. Usually there's a set number of months. And then if you can show that the product has been tested and stable for longer than, say, 3 years, you don't need to put an expiration date there anymore, right? And when we're talking about product stability, oftentimes this is organoleptic properties, how it looks, major change in color, separation, that sort of thing. Product stability. Again, not necessarily rotting or microbial contamination. Some markets consider certain cosmetics as drugs, right? So the United States FDA, for example, considers sunscreens and antiperspirant as drugs, over-the-counter drugs, OTC drugs, which is fairly uncommon. Not a lot of markets do that. But for markets that do consider certain cosmetics as drugs, they will require an expiration date, period. And very often the expiration has to do with efficacy. So a guaranteed efficacy of the active ingredient up to a certain point. So for sunscreen ingredients, for example, past their expiration date, again, it's not rotting or going bad, or it doesn't necessarily have a microbial issue, but the efficacy of the sunscreen might be less. Or probably more accurately put, the tested protection factors, those numbers, might be less past the expiration date. Otherwise, a lot of times expiration dates, like I mentioned earlier, if they're required in certain markets, some FDAs would require them if the product shows instability past a certain number of months in storage, just sitting around or in an oven or on a shelf. So many times expiration dates will refer to a shelf life more than this will now rot and go bad and start growing little zombies that will attack you. Again, just sitting there with adequate preservation in good storage situations without a lot of sharing or putting product or other things like water, etc., into the container, the chances of the product staying stable and free of microbial contamination are really pretty high. And this is more true for products that contain less water, and they can last quite a long time. Quick note on preservation. Most cosmetics on the market are preserved by something. They use preservatives. Some of the more common ones, parabens or formaldehyde-releasing preservatives, quaternium 14, if I'm not mistaken. And there's actually a really highly allergenic one, MCI, and that was common, really quite common for a while in baby wipes and makeup removal wipes. Methylchloroisothiazolinone is the MCI, and methyl isothiazolinone is the MI. So MCI, MI. But parabens, formaldehyde-releasing preservatives, quaternium 15, I have to remember that number, and MCI, MI are really top contact allergens. So these preservatives, if you have a product that lasts a really, really long time, part of it can be because it doesn't have water, and part of it could be because it has a lot of preservatives to make it last. Because remember, a lot of cosmetics, after they're manufactured, have to go on a boat for long sea transit, and then have to be distributed to different stores, and then have to stay on the shelf in the store for quite a time before they're purchased and used at home. So they require some preservation, right? At VMV, because we don't like to use allergens, that's kind of our thing. So our preservation system is a self-preserving system. It's very healthy, non-allergenic. And again, especially with less water in the proper storage conditions and with proper use, most cosmetics, including ours, will last a really long time. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And if you're seeing an expiration date, chances are it's because it's required by the FDA of a particular country. And more often than not, it has to do with how long the product stays organoleptically the way it should look and smell and all this stuff. But it doesn't mean it will rot. Right? Rotting really comes normally from a microbial contamination. So some tips to prevent contamination would be, number one, never pour water or spilled contents of the product back into the container. If you're going to sneeze or cough, do so into your, this is the best practice anyway now, right? Do so into your sleeve or the bottom of your shirt, away from the opening of the container. Number two, don't share mascara or lip gloss or lipstick, anything that's used directly on the mucosa, the wetter membranous part of like the eyes, nostrils, and mouth. Number 3, apply makeup with your own applicator. And we have a product that's an instant, no rinse, hypoallergenic makeup cleaner. That's great. You spritz it onto your applicator after each use and you rub it clear, and it helps extend the life of your brushes. It also has monolaurin, so it actually helps disinfect your makeup applicators, which is great. And if you're a heavy user of makeup, wash your brushes, wash your applicators once a week. If you're less heavy a user, then it can be less frequent. We actually have a nice article on vmvinskin.com that's a great way, step by step, for how to wash your makeup brushes properly and safely and hypoallergenically. So it's good for your skin and good for the applicators as well. Number 4, if someone has an infection or a potential infection, might have a cut, a fever, cough, blister, put the sharing on hold until that's cleared. So if you have a cosmetic product and it does have an expiration date and it is past the expiration date, do you have to trash it automatically? And the 3 answers are not necessarily, yes if, and yes if. So not necessarily is if the product hasn't shown any kind of major changes. Even after its expiration date, it might actually still be okay to use. The chances are not low that this would be the case. The second answer of yes if is if the product shows major changes, separation, a growth, mold, something turns black, it smells disgusting, that type of thing, even before the expiration date, absolutely trash that, because then it's a sign of microbial contamination, and that's more important than the stated expiration date. And the third answer of yes if has to do with if a product has active ingredients, particularly ones like sunscreen that have a real health function. If the product is past its expiration date, you don't have to trash it right away, but you should really be aware and use with caution. Because especially for sunscreens, past the expiration date, the SPF, the UVA protection factor, all of that might be lower than what is tested already. So, ask your dermatologist, particularly if you have a history of skin cancer or very high risk, and double up, triple up, etc. But yeah, to be on the safe side, something that's considered a drug that has active ingredients that have a real health function, probably you need to replace that if it's expired. If you are immunocompromised or have extremely sensitive skin, a medically managed skin condition like atopic dermatitis or psoriasis, as always, ask your doctor and clarify with the manufacturer what the expiration date or lack of expiration date really means. So again, in summary, the skinny on expiration dates, most cosmetics actually last a very, very, very long time, especially true if they have less water or no water. Years and years, right? If you see an expiration date on a product, the chances are it is required by the FDA of that particular market, and it might be due to the product being considered a drug in that market, or if that particular FDA has a certain number of months of requirement for organoleptic stability for you to be able to put no expiration date. Or it could have to do with shelf life for selling with a particular distributor in a particular market. Rarely does it have to do with, actually I haven't even seen it, with rot, with actual just sort of leaving a banana out there and it will rot kind of thing. If your product is funky, there's major separation, it smells rancid or putrid, things are growing, you have mold, etc., there has been a microbial contamination. Meaning, if the product hadn't been open, if it had been stored properly, nothing got into the container, it probably wouldn't have happened, and you still would have been able to use that product for a good long time. To prevent microbial contamination, keep the sharing to a minimum. Do not pour back removed portions of the product or let any water or droplets or anything get into the product, and store it properly. A quick reminder about who we are. We make the safest, most proven effective care on the planet, and how we prove that is, first, we have a grading system that works a little bit like the SPF in that it's a very quick, immediate immediately visible number that you see at the front of each product called the VH rating system. Like here, you would see that. And it shows you how many allergens, how many top contact allergens are omitted from a formulation. Should a formulation have a top contact allergen in there, because it is highly unlikely you would patch test positive for all 109. And some allergens actually have really good benefits, like vitamin E is a wonderful antioxidant. If a product had an allergen in there, it would state VH minus 108, for example, and there would be an asterisk that corresponded to the ingredient list, so you can see quickly if it's an allergen that you patch tested positive for. And if it's not, then you can still use the product. We approach safety primarily through allergen omission, and we use as our reference for top contact allergens independent objective studies that are regularly published by specialists in the field of contact dermatitis. We also do a lot of patch testing, not just of the final formulation, but of the raw material and ingredient, even applicators, and we will do allergen screening for packaging to reduce the risk of allergens leaching into the formulation. The VH rating system has proven so effective that we have a study reviewing its use over 30 years and showing less than 0.1% reactions in over 30 years. Speaking of clinical studies, how we prove efficacy is by publishing our clinical studies. And we have over 75. My mother, who is our founding dermatopathologist, has over 200. A lot of that research has also gone into our product. So we're very committed to safety and proven efficacy. That's it. I hope you found this helpful, and if you did, certainly please share it. Follow us on Facebook and like us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our blog, vmvinskin.com. And if you would like to shop our products in the Philippines, it's vmvhypoallergenics.ph. In the United States and internationally, it's vmvhypoallergenics.com. And you can check actually for distributors and wholesalers in your country if you want to see if we're available locally where you are. Guys, stay safe, be well, and have a skintastic day. Bye.